Hey, everybody. Welcome to Spirit Coffee Talk with myself, Lisa Richmond. I have Elise Catherine and Jeanette Byro, and we talk every week about all things spirit and kind of what's gone down. This week, we talk about eclipses and eclipse season. We have the 6/6 portal coming up, and we kind of dive into what exactly a portal is. So if you've heard that term and are a little bit curious, we could talk a little bit about that. And then bias and maybe how to check your own bias and the polarities that are kind of existing right now. And then we kind of wrap up with how to create a little bit more compassion and space for yourself. So it's a beautiful conversation this week, and we hope you enjoy it. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Spirit Coffee Talk. My name is Lisa Richmond. Joining me is Jeanette Byro and Elise Catherine. And we meet every Friday and talk all things spirit and what's going on and how the week went. So I hope you enjoy us this week, and we'll get started right away.
All right. How's everyone doing today? How are you guys feeling? How's
I'm
June?
feeling like it's a Friday, it's the end of the week.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely Friday. How's everyone? How was your week? How'd it go?
Yeah, right? Okay, I'm gonna dive in here because I like deer in headlights, right? It has been an interesting week and a wobbly week.
Mm.
For me particularly, I felt like I haven't been involved in the wobblies, but I've been watching the wobblies. So I feel like I'm slightly removed and I've been watching a whole ton of things of like whether it be dramas, controversy, successes, sadness. And I'm like standing on the sidelines, just kind of watching everything happen. And it's this weird like pause and in between. That's kind of what I've been feeling this week.
Yeah, enormous change. I felt too. Like it
Mm-hmm.
just seems like there's a change in the like a change in the air. I can't even describe it more than that. Like the way that I would normally respond to something, or the way that systems are working, or even schedules. It just seems like there's a ton of change or
Yeah.
desire for change. All of a
Yeah.
sudden something comes up and it's like, that used to work for me, but it's not working for me very much. And it's like in my personal experience in my life right now, this past week has been filled with great change, like huge, huge change. And it was like I wanted this, but it came really quickly. And it's like maneuvering my way through it when in a human capacity, obviously, because I'm dealing with it in a human capacity, but like knowing on a higher level that it's for the greater good. And this is what I wanted. This is what I called in. And I know this is for the greater good. I know this is a part of my path and my family's path, but change this quickly and this intensely can be very difficult. And I think um, using the tools that I have along with what's best for my family and my kids and stuff it's been tough. Like change can be really tough even when we're wanting it,
Mm-hmm. Oh
you know?
yeah, there's always an adjustment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been feeling very similar. For me, there's been a lot of similar lines. It's like things that I knew felt coming that I saw like maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 months out. All of a sudden, I'm being like pushed into right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even a decision of like, oh, maybe I'll just hold off and like not quite decide. It's like, no, you need to decide now. And this is happening one way or another. There's change. So you decide which road you want to go down. And then for me, some ways it felt, especially at first when I was kind of confronted with these things, I was like, this is the opposite. Like this feels like normally when change is put in front of me, I can get a good feel of like intuitively this feels like alignment. Even if it's scary, even if it's hard change, it can still feel like, yeah, this is good. And I feel good with decision A over B or whatever. This week for me, the decisions feel very ambiguous and like neither one really felt super aligned. I had to kind of dig into it and really call in the people in my life to support me through that, because even with my own tools, I was left just floundering
Right.
in it, and not
Question for
being
you.
able
I'm
to.
curious. Elise, I'm curious because listening to that, I'm like, I totally resonate. Do you feel, because I don't know what your experience was, do you feel that in a way it was almost like you had the ability to choose from a place where you are now and how you've come into yourself now versus how you maybe would have responded or how you would have chosen in the way that it used to work for you, kind of thing, like in your upgrades and you being pulled forward into like into your higher self kind of thing and into this time and place, higher frequency? Do you feel like sometimes you're being put in these positions to choose now as kind of differently or in a different path than how you would have responded or chosen in the past? Like, is there any patterning there?
Hmm. So yes, I would say in a lot of ways, um, it's interesting because I would say in the last couple of years, I've been able to, and even prior to that, as I was kind of moving into this space in my life and more in tune with my intuition and mediumship and all of that, um, this almost felt at first like I was back in that old headspace. Like I couldn't
Mm.
see anything good in it. And I just was like,
Yeah.
sucks. I don't know why I'm being put in this position. It's unfair. It's opposite of what I wanted. And like I was pissed, to be frank,
Yeah.
because I was like, I'm following the nudges. I'm doing the things that feel aligned. And I've been doing that for a long time. Why am I now being put in this position? And it felt opposite. It felt like a punishment almost. And it took me about half the week sitting in those crappy feelings, um, feeling sorry for myself, kind of disconnecting from everything, and then like working through it and moving back into a space of like, okay, still have the same kind of feelings about it, maybe not from such a like negative quote unquote, I
Mhm.
don't really like saying that, but like from like just a really frustrated point of view, versus now I'm like, okay, well, these are the choices, so here's my I wrote out like to the universe, spirit, I was like, hey, here's my list of demands for these two choices, like here's what I want out of this one, here's what I want out of this one, and you can let me know where the best route to go is. So I really haven't made a decision yet because there's still some pieces up in the air, but um yeah, it at first it felt very confronting and like I wasn't happy with it, and I had
Mm.
to work through the energies of it and work through what was coming up for me to then be able to make a choice
Totally.
in this type of space.
Yeah.
You know what's so interesting is like I've had a very different experience of that. I mean, not one being better than the other. Mine's just very different. And it's interesting because this idea of how I was saying, I feel like I'm stepping back and observing. I feel like I have had a dozen or more micro scenarios and choices to make that have given me an opportunity in pondering those choices to refine where I'm going and what I'm doing. And they've been, it feels like when this little thing comes up of like, here's the thing, what do you want to do about it? It's like all of a sudden time like stretches out, like almost like putty. It's like this time stretches out and I have this opportunity to look from here and scan the thing and then come back and then choose my response. And I feel like that's been happening in like everything has been these like extensions of time to
Sweet.
observe and choose, but in like
Wouldn't that
micro
be
things.
awesome?
But it's like this position of being very detached. So I can observe
Right.
the shit, pardon me, but I can, and the joy and everything in between and the choices. But it's like I've been having these weird experiences of this like stretching out and like review the whole thing and then choose, but in like micro events in
Is it like you're in
situations.
that movie Click with Adam Sandler where he has the remote and
Oh
can
my
like
God.
pause time and then like
Yes.
around and like
That's me. I wish I had a remote right now because then I could like click you guys. Yes, it's been like that.
Cool.
But in
So has
that,
that
I can
helped
see
you?
what you
Has
guys
that
are
helped
seeing.
you detach and then like have that more of a detached perspective of every situation? Like, what
Mhm.
a gift. That's
It
amazing.
has, but it's not like I had a big thing happen and I was like, wait a minute, I want to step back and do this thing. It was like, I feel like I'm in between dimensions almost, or like I'm sitting right on the cusp of 3D. So I have that like slower energy, although it's faster, but to me it's like slower energy of 4D influencing third dimension reality. I don't know how to put it into words except for the putty that's being pulled apart for a moment, right? And it's just given me a different perspective to reinforce how I want to feel in where I'm going. Is what
That's
I could
cool.
say. Yeah. And so I think what's happening right now, and I was mentioning this to you guys before, is like we are coming up into the eclipse, right? So we're in the eclipse
Season.
yeah, but what is the word? I was saying it just
Portal?
before.
Portal?
Gateway.
Gateway.
Yeah, the gateway into the eclipse. And we have a portal, a 6/6 portal that opens on Sundays, an energetic hub of energy. And I've been seeing visions of portals for the last while and these changes that come with this huge, massive portal. I didn't realize it was probably the 6/6 portal, but with that opening on Sunday, as we're in this eclipse gateway to the eclipse on the 10th, we're in this like slowing of time and this stalling of time. And I think for those that need to really wrap up some things that just do not need to be going forward after the eclipse, it's like raining down, right? And I think for others, maybe don't need to have it rain down a whole bunch of things, but to observe, there's those that are observing, right? And then I think there would be those that are just sitting there at the gateway and they're like, I'm ready, I'll wait till Thursday, and they, everything is jolly. But I think everyone's experiencing these different things in this energetic shift to this eclipse, because literally there is always huge energetic changes that come in the eclipse season, right? It creates change moments on the planet. And I think that's what we're all experiencing, is this gateway energy, this ramping up of this portal that opens. And I'll stop yabbering in just a second, is with this eclipse is a big shift of like endings and beginnings, or what some people are calling the little death or death and rebirth. But the dying of the old and the beginning of the new, or the higher frequency of the different paths.
But can you guys feel that? Like, doesn't that resonate so much? Of like the ending of big things, little things, and even the ending of like what we were talking about, at least, is like the ending of how I, like for me, how the ending of how I would react to something, or the ending of a perspective or perception that I held, and then I'm getting confronted with this change, and then instead of responding in the same fear energy or frustration or whatever that it would, I feel it and I'm like, wait, no, that actually doesn't align with me anymore. Like, I don't actually think that. Like, I'm not actually scared at all. But I reacted that way because it was almost like an unconscious thing, because I held that frequency or that belief system for so long. And it's like, it's the ending of that, the whole thing. Right. And so not only the ending of like a physical thing, but also the ending of a perception or an energy or a belief system that's not mine, or, you know what I mean? Like, so much.
Yeah. And I also wonder if there's endings of old timelines and old plans happening, because it feels like, a lot of people, including myself, are kind of going on a trajectory and making decisions in alignment with that and what felt good. And then now all of a sudden it's like, okay, we're taking like a hard right. And that was not the plan.
No, it wasn't the plan, but you're getting pushed in to do it. And you're like, whoa,
we're doing it right. Okie dokes. And it feels like someone described it to me, a good friend of mine described it to me as, it's like I'm like being taken on an off ramp to like detour over some, an accident or it's funny I use that word, I don't know why I said that, but construction, or it's like that detour around something, and you didn't expect that, but it's happening. And so it part of that feels like a death, because I think it's, for me anyways, it was very like, it almost felt like a punishment, if I'm honest. Like, I felt like, did I do something wrong? Like, where was I not paying attention to something, or was I missing signs? And it took me a little bit of like sitting it in and moving through it to realize like, no, I don't think that's the case. I think it's that the world around us is changing. And I think more than we can even see is changing. And with that, everything else has to kind of reshuffle and realign.
And I want to speak to that too, actually, because I think you're totally right with that. And I think that's what's making it hard for people to tune in to what's coming, right? So this eclipse gateway is going to have a lot of surprises, So I think there's going to be a lot of people in that same boat with you, like you were saying, where you're like, I didn't see this coming. Like why didn't I feel it coming? Especially you're super intuitive and you always have these insights. Like anytime I have a conversation with you, it comes back to like, remember I said, or remember I had that feeling, right?
And I'm just thinking now, remember I said, I can't see past June.
Yes.
It's like, I couldn't plan life. I would make
Yeah.
plans and I was like, yeah, we'll see. It's like everything was darkness, not like in a bad way, but just like it's shaded out. You can't see that part yet.
Yeah. And that's usually when something is like undetermined or shifting. And so it's interesting. The timing, again, retrospect is the greatest clarifier to be where we're at now in this gateway, coming up to this eclipse in June, where, like Lisa was saying, we're getting so much messaging of shifting into a new timeline that is why we can't predict yet. And not that we can predict everything, but like I've been saying, I feel spirit is kind of limiting me on greater questions, even about my own life, because it's not available.
Yeah, honestly, we've been since December 21st. The next phase of life we saw till June.
Yeah.
Like, remember, like December 21st, the great change of December 21st. And then we've been calling stuff all the way to June.
Yeah. And then what comes with June? So interesting, the timing, hey? This is, you guys that are watching this is happening like as we speak. We're like, ping, 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 ping. It's so true. I think this is really exciting though, in one sense, because I really believe, just like you did, Elise, how you wrote out that paper, right? And you spoke to the universe, like now is a great time. Again, I'm going to be repetitive, but in this lead up to there's this fly sabotaging me. In the lead up to this eclipse gateway, we have an ability to really be clear in our communication to spirit of what we want, or the universe, however you manifest. And like you did, like you write out a list or express your list, sing it out, dance it out, but have the intention behind what you're doing and make the most of this energy right now. Like, what do I want? What do I want it to feel like? Right? I think that's a great thing that we can do in this energy right now up until at least Thursday.
Jeanette, could you do like the listeners a favor? Because you're so good at explaining things and like you're making sense of life videos and stuff. You're super good at making it known for people that might not be super familiar with exactly what a portal is.
Okay. So a portal, to me, my understanding, can be a couple different things. The basic idea of a portal is an entry and an exit from one realm into another, one dimension into another, right? So when you see like the movie Interstellar, if you guys have seen that with
Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, they go through this portal into another dimension, time and space. There's lots of movies about portals. Stargate Atlantis, they go into portals and they go places. So portal is the way I see it is always like a funnel, this like whirling funnel that allows you to cross time and space into another dimension. Now, I haven't seen people physically go into a portal, so I'm talking energetic portals that allow that entry and exit of energies. And so whenever there's certain alignments in the stars, it creates portal energies in multiple places around the world that either brings in an influx of higher light beings, knowledge, awareness, or sometimes can bring in an influx of darker energies, right? Just as it can help exit a whole bunch of darker energies and so on and so forth. So that's why this idea of this portal opening up that aligns on Sunday with, and I say the 6/6 portal, it's the 6th day of the 6th month. That's an opening to an influx of energy. And really the way I keep being shown it is this is an energy, a portal that's open so that anything that needs to die off, pardon that expression, be released, be let go, taking off burdens, taking off limitations, archaic ways of thinking, you name it, is all being shoveled into this portal, basically. It's like these big shovels. And then after the eclipse, it'll go and be closed. So it is no longer a part of this planet. That doesn't mean that everything that's negative in our world is going to jump to that portal and Friday morning we're going to wake up all levitating and floating with butterflies, right? It doesn't mean that, but they are opportunities when more people are aware of what the energy is doing to help shift energetics, which is why I think it's really important people use the energy of this lead up to really manifest, like Elise was talking about.
Thanks.
Hope that makes sense.
That is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
and that can be kind of part of this change feeling, this change energy, because as things kind of get stirred up and ready to go, letting go of archaic ways of thinking is a big one. Maybe shadow masculine, maybe old perspectives. And I think that sometimes that's what it's about when things come up to the surface that bring our attention, maybe that have been buried underneath. And we did a round table, the three of us and two more ladies at the end of 2020 talking about 2021 energy, and we're talking about all about the shift in energies and the surface of things and the change, right? Surfacing old things and the change. And so it's going to feel really mucky when it's brought to the surface, but it's awareness. It's being brought awareness so that we can help move that old archaic energy out. And I think some of the really heartbreaking stories that have come out lately, and some of like, I mean, it started in 2020. It started before that, even with the Me Too. Like, there's stuff that is coming to the surface. It's really, really, really heartbreaking, but it needs to be brought up so that we can start shifting out of that energetic place of mind, the way we used to do things, right? The way we used to go and just do things in a more like unconscious perspective, and things were really hidden. And I think some of the things that were really hidden are actually physically being brought to the surface, but also like emotionally and spiritually, and a lot of change is happening. So change isn't always easy, right? And it can really evoke a lot of emotions. But this change I really truly feel for a lot of people who have had a hard week, and there's been a lot of heaviness in the media, and what we've had to take a look at is that I think we can come together now. We can start to come together more and more, and using this energy and human connection. And like, I really feel like we're starting to move forward with this. We're starting to push away some of these old ways of being, and we're starting to bring awareness that this is the way it was, but we're not having it anymore. It doesn't happen overnight, but that's what this change energy is all about. Having that portal open up to start bringing out some of this, darker stuff that is surfacing, that we can start to clear out, to bring more collective awareness and increase the energy of this whole globe. It doesn't happen overnight, but it's these bits, it's these pieces that we're talking about. So I think that coming together in communities, coming together to support each other, just to listen, just to give space to voices that need to be heard, is a big part of this change right now too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that a lot of the really sad and heavy things that are coming up, it's coming up in ways that I think is creating, especially for, like, if we're talking about the Indigenous folks in Canada and everything that's been going on, but even when we look at like Black Lives Matter, that really kind of percolated up last year with George Floyd, that was just a little over a year ago. So it's really interesting to me that these things are paralleling in timeline over the year. That there's these big kind of explosive things that are happening that need to come to the surface, because I think what we've realized is that for a lot of people that sit in a privileged place, we were able to look away from the very real experiences of people in this world of color or minorities, or anyone that's kind of experienced any sort of hardship at the sake of systems. But the problem is that for so long, those systems, like the systems are built for us to not see the problems. And
Absolutely.
so when we think about, like, I think going into 2020, and it used to be, people would say the year of clear vision, like 2020, and everyone was like, oh, we're going to see all the amazing things. And then it was like, no, actually, you need to see the shit. You need to see the shit that is hidden, and some of it is not hidden, but it was hidden in our minds because we didn't experience it. And how
Absolutely.
And so it's that, like, becoming aware of the darkness that does exist and how we can start to shed light on it to change it. But I
Absolutely.
also think that's true in spaces that we didn't think that was the case. So the wellness spaces, for instance, or the medical systems, for instance, like there's just so much coming to the surface of how fundamentally, even like environmentally, so much is coming to the surface and making us question, you know, how do we want to move forward in this world? What do we want this to look like? And unfortunately, I think when you're talking about system issues, you got to break it down first. It's pretty hard to change a massive issue from the top down. You kind of have to pull it all apart and then rebuild. But that
And that
feels
I think
awful.
is one of the brilliant things about social media. Like there's a lot of stuff that people are like, but look at how quickly social media can grab your attention and how people all over the globe can bring their voice forward. They can share their stories. And so people that coming out of a pandemic where we're secluded, yeah, it hasn't been great that we have to be over the screen all the time, but it's allowing people to hear voices from all over the place and start to see things and start to form, you know, their perspective or their knowledge base based upon people's stories, not just one source turning on the TV, you know? We get to see things more. So, I mean, where sometimes social media can have a bit of a hard push, it's also bringing a lot forward for people to see, which is all about change too. Like I really think that change is one of the biggest things feared, and it's so heavy, right? Not heavy, prevalent right now that it's kind of like grab your stuff, grab your like essentials, and just keep going. You know, because you're part of the change. If you're feeling it and you're listening and you know, you're part of that change.
Yeah.
So grab your stuff and let's go, you know? It's not going to be easy all the time, but you're a part of it. That's why you're here, you know?
Absolutely. You know, and I think too, there's a big thing to be said about that is with the change that we're seeing, we're also seeing kind of like polarity and contradiction in sources and information and like, what is the truth? Like, where is the truth? How do you find the truth? Because the amount of bias being able to be put on any truth, and we can even bring this back to spiritual truth. If I even take the bias in the realm of spirit woo, when people are channeling information, you also have to question, where is their information coming from?
100%.
What is their own personal bias? And do they know how to separate that bias to channel a clear message? Right. And so I use that as an example, but that's being shown everywhere in medical stuff. We're seeing two sides of the same story that are completely contradictory, and both sides just want to be right. There's no middle ground. There's like, I'm right, you're wrong. No, I'm right, you're wrong. Not, well, okay, sorry, I screwed up here, but I was right here. And yeah, you were. And I messed up here, but I really brought this to the table, and let's collaborate. Right?
That's not we'll ever get to that. Do you think we'll ever get where the polarities will start? Well, I can see that they're already coming in a little bit, but it's almost like there's more. Like where there used to be like red then blue, right? Like it was like big polarities this way, that way. Now there's like polarities on so many different levels that are kind of, you know, like spiritual polarities, religious polarities, like that all exists, but like it's almost exploded with it. It's like where there
has to. But I think it has to right now. Like, I think we can't live where there's a single narrative anymore. Like we did, I'm going to super generalize here. So there's my caption, my bottom, super generalization coming. But if we think of the 1950s, there was more of a single narrative that was controlled, followed, and so on, right? Generalization. And now we have like 300 narratives, and each of those have splits and fractions, right? And I think we have to have all of that to be able to really shake up all the rocks, basically, to see what there is. Like we have to have all of that polarization, because again, that idea of bias, everybody has a bias. There's a bias even in how we present our thoughts of whether green apples are better or red apples are better, right? Like, do you like red apples better because your grandma used to bake apple pies with red apples and it reminds you of that comfort of home and you maybe don't realize it? So you're going to go on saying red apples are better than green, right? Like, and I think we need to remember that when we are debating, right? When people are debating, is like it's based on a bias based on personal experience
and comfort too.
and
It's like, well, if
comfort.
we can't trust the one narrative that I'm used to trusting all the time, then what does that make me? Like, then I feel so unsafe, and I get that. I understand that because there's comfort and security in a certain way, or a way of being, or that you're used to, and so to shake that up is really difficult. But I actually think it's really important. Like, I think this is totally my perspective though, okay? Like, this is opinion. I think if we spent more time trying to understand where somebody's coming from in a perspective, especially the ones that instantly give us a because we're not used to it, right? We don't know where they're coming from. It seems completely ridiculous in your mind, but it's like those are the things I'm like, okay, I'm gonna lean into this a little bit because it's triggering me and making me agitated. Why? Right? If this is a polarity for me, I want to decrease the polarity and allowing myself to maybe learn where they're coming. I'm not saying that at the end of the day, I always am like, no, actually, I think that way. But it helps me to be able to understand and have compassion more and know where things aren't just black and white, right? Like there's different ways. And it's, sometimes I don't know. I don't even know how. I just think that if we could really allow ourselves to maybe, especially the things that really kind of tick us off a little bit when we first hear about it, like challenge yourself to be like, okay, I'm going to try and learn where they're coming from and where the sources of information comes from and where they got this idea so that I can have a little bit more compassion or understanding about this.
If we're looking at any of these issues on one side of the spectrum or the other, I feel like, and I was in a course in learning from this person this year that talked about how the problem was created on the spectrum in the first place. So to debate it from one side or the other, you're still within the same paradigm of the problem itself.
Totally.
In the first place. And so I feel like sometimes that's where this like back and forth happens, because it's like you're not actually elevating the conversation and the thinking around it. And it becomes this place of like right, wrong, you're right, I'm wrong, or vice versa, or just coming from a space of fear or anger or digging in to say like what you're doing is wrong. And there's so many, every single thing that we talk about or every single thing that is so complex. And I want to say my disclaimer is, unless it comes to basic like human rights and equal rights, I
agree.
I don't feel like there's really a whole lot of debate, and I'm not going to agree to
I
disagree
agree
with someone on that.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so it's like caveat aside, like we're not talking about that. But when we're talking about, all these other things that you can have polarity in, we shouldn't be talking about it from the same spectrum, because the spectrum itself is what created the problem in the first place. And I think, Lisa, what you were saying is like being able to have these conversations, see what triggers you, reflecting on like, oh, why am I feeling so confronted by this? Doing that work and then having that conversation from a more compassionate, understanding place where you can be like, okay, I can understand why that's, really scary for you. Or I can understand, I can understand why these medical things feel so scary for you because you've had medical trauma in the past. And so that might be really hard for you. Or taking it to a spiritual level, you've had lives and experiences where those fears and triggers are coming up. I'm sorry you've had that. Like, how can we support you in healing those things and coming to a conclusion that's best for you? And I think it's this like elevating it up and seeing it from a higher perspective rather than just meeting in the middle on the same spectrum.
Right.
Like you're probably going to find yourself caught in some sort of the same problem again.
Totally.
But that's, I think, where it comes back to like the breaking down of everything right now. It's like you have to break it down in order to change your level.
Totally.
And I think we can really do that. That's a great thought, because I was just hearing spirit and they're saying share the idea or share the understanding of the dark energy, which I'll get to in a minute. But if we apply that spectrum idea, like you're saying, because that's a great visual, to even the dealings with ourselves, not in just how we deal with others, but even the judgments we have of self, right? Or things in our past we don't want to see, or things we don't want to embrace, or perspectives we had that we don't want to necessarily change, but we don't really know why, right? It's having that willingness to like re-explore it again. Because then if I take that into where the energies are going right now is spirit, one thing that they have been showing me is there has been a big increase of triggers from lower vibe energies. I call them pesky energies for a lot of people. And they have been kind of affecting our auras easily. They kind of like come by and, kind of put a little stink on you kind of thing. Right.
Ask
And
my husband about that. See what he has to say.
right. And so these energies are coming around right now because they're wanting to create as much of a havoc in a sense as they can before they know they are going to be ousted with this portal. So that there's many different levels. So again, I'm not saying all the energies are going to be gone Friday morning, we're good, but there's a certain level of these darker energies or lower vibrational energies that have hit their exit point. They're done. They're, sorry, your plane's leaving on Thursday. Okay. Sorry, you got to get on it. And so they're like, well, fine. Well, I'll get on the plane. But before I do, I'm going to do everything I can. I'm going to blow all the money I have left and I'm going to, vandalize whatever I can. That's what it is energetically. And so as we're going through this shift right now as people trying to grow in consciousness, we are having these extra little nudge triggers, right? These little like pokes in the ribs. We're like, come on, like low blow, not fair. And so I think if we really recognize that too, so that we don't, A, feel like we're going crazy, B, think we're the worst person in the world, and recognize some of those thoughts inside our minds are not necessarily ours, they're external to us. It's not just negative self-talk, it's kind of triggered talk from lower vibe energies. We can hit that spectrum for ourselves and be like, okay, what's actually real here? What's not? What do I think? And create this like force field of energy that helps push out that lower vibe energy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
And it goes
quiet. I think I'm like reflecting in my mind of all those times this week.
Well, yeah. I was thinking
major triggers.
Yeah, I was thinking too, back to kind of earlier in the week for me when I was feeling really triggered about this situation that I'm in. And I'm like, why is this happening? Like, I don't understand. And there was a lot of frustration around it. And then I kind of found myself midweek shifting into this space of almost frustration at myself for being like, why are you looking at it this way? Like anytime I would talk about it, I'd be like, I know I'm looking at it from a negative perspective and kind of like crapping on myself for that. And at the same time, like now as we're having this conversation, I'm like, but if we don't allow, and I know we've talked about this before, but if we don't allow space for those negative feelings or emotions to come up, similar to what we were just saying about like, overall, we can't shift and grow and rebuild to remove some of those negative systems, or when we're talking about like thinking or emotions, negative ways of being, if I don't allow it to come up, I'm not going to be aware enough of it to shift it and change it. Does that make sense? Like if I don't allow my, that I'm feeling like temper tantrumy at the beginning of the week for why this is happening, and I don't allow some space for that, if I just try and like light and love myself out of it, like, okay, it's okay, everything's fine, everything happens for a reason, whatever, messaging you want to put around it. If I don't just allow the shit to come up, I'm not ever going to shift it. I'm not ever going to change it. I'm not ever going to help it grow and evolve and move away.
And then the more uncomfortable it'll get.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like, I think sometimes it's like, oh, I don't want to feel, or I shouldn't feel that bad stuff. I shouldn't feel angry. I shouldn't feel this. And it's like, well, if we don't allow space for it, how does it ever see light? It just stays in there and is insidious. And I feel like also is probably more, not the word receptive, like impacted by maybe some of those darker, lower vibe, peskier energies. It's like those lower vibe ways of being are more susceptible to influence.
Of course, because it creates that like magnet energy. You attract the energetic that you're in. So if you're resisting it and you're sitting in your own like whatever, and you're resisting it and not wanting it, then it's almost like you then you attract that peskier kind of, they're like, it kind of feeds off of that energy. And then you get into self-sabotage, you get into like inner critic and all that kind of stuff, you know?
And I think that's a good point, because I just want to add too, for people that are listening and they're like, okay, so great, there's dark energies, there's eclipse, gateway portals and all this, like, well, what do I do? What do I do with dark energies? It just comes back again in the most simplest way to your intent. And again, I really like Elise's example where she wrote it out on paper and she said, universe, this is what I want. If it's option A, I want this. If it's option B, I could do it this way. This is what I'm okay with. And so you can do that when you set your intent of how you want to feel and what you want and how you wish to create it. And then, you flow with life. You're basically creating this force field of energy of higher vibe frequency around you. And when you are higher vibe, lower vibe energies kind of bounce off. They just kind of like hit, they're like bugs on a windshield. They're like ping, 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 ping. Like it doesn't bother you. So it's not that there needs to be some deep practice or you have to be a medium to see these lower energies or anything like that. It just goes based on frequency. If yours vibrate faster, it doesn't allow the slow ones to come in and permeate, basically. So,
yeah.
Well,
so like I'm going to set my intention behind it doing this. I've got a lot of stuff I'm processing and I'm going to feel the feels and I'm just going to be in the muck, but I'm going to do it with the intention of having this safety kind of around me. So I'm putting this safety around me so that nothing can come through. So it can be an intention of just, I surround myself with the protection of light and love from the highest consciousness. Like I'm protecting myself with this good energy. And inside that protection, I'm feeling the feels. I'm not going to push out anything, but that way it's like I'm allowing myself to feel it. I'm not judging myself on how it looks to feel, but I also have no space for any of the outside negative energies to affect me because I got enough going on. And you can even have a visual, like visualize this like little sphere of energy around yourself. You don't have to see it. And if it feels silly to you, then make it feel differently or look differently. But it's just that intention alone can help you really separate what's yours, what's not yours, and how you want to feel it all and, experience the muck. Yeah. Because, you're removing some of that resistance. It allows yourself to move through it a lot faster, I feel like, with a lot less of that. Because it's the resistance that causes the back and forthness and the, no, I'm good. But holy, I had an anxiety attack this morning, but I'm okay. I'm just going to breathe through it. But then I'm not, it's like, no, give yourself the space, put yourself inside the sphere, be mucky, because you're allowed to be mucky inside your sphere, but the sphere is keeping you safe from anything else. Do you know what I mean?
Totally get it. It's a great example. Yeah.
Yeah, I find, that's like a really great kind of summarization of how I feel with, and I think we're starting to see this conversation kind of come up more in the past couple of years in certain spiritual or kind of wellness worlds, is this idea of that, we have to transcend everything and everything is light and love and you can't fight for things and you can't, like, it's just, everything is just this like always in a higher vibe. And I think it can be misleading to say things like that for a number of reasons, and bypassy in a lot of ways, like bypassing our experiences. And I think we're ignoring the fact that even if we are these divine, spiritual, transcended beings at our core, we still chose to be here as humans, right?
Totally.
So, like, bypass everything that it is to be a human, to be all light and love. It's like, well, that kind of seems like defeats the purpose of why.
Yeah, you did come here to be human.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
To make space for your human self.
I don't know what is happening with my nose today, but it is so itchy. Every time I talk, I'm like, oh my God.
Me too. I keep doing this. Yeah, that's so funny. And it only started since we were talking.
It's like spirits under my nose with a feather, like
pesky nose energy.
Totally.
My nose chakra is having some issues today.
Nose chakra. Oh gosh, that's awesome.
Right.
Okay, well, I think that was a beautiful conversation to really summarize this week and help people kind of, I don't know, it helped me to have more clarity stepping into the weekend and to what Sunday is and then where it's going into next week. So I'm really curious what transpires in this next chunk of time until we come back again on Friday. And like, who knows, maybe we'll be standing here and I'll burn my hair off and I don't know, like, who knows?
Or not.
Yeah, hopefully not. Hopefully, I kind of like my hair, so maybe not. But yeah, I think that was really great.
That was good.
Yeah.
Just a little message to leave. It's like, I used to say this all the time in yoga to the students, but there's doing your best every day looks different. And so don't judge yourself on what your best looked like at one point or even yesterday or to like what it looks like today. Is that it is always different. If doing your best a day was actually laying down and sleeping and not getting out of bed, then that was doing your best. And we kind of talked about this with self-care, but it's like they're wanting us to emphasize to people because when we judge ourselves for going through the muck or the confusion of change and we react in a certain way, we can be hard on ourselves, be like, I thought I was better than that. Or I remember when I was like, I got up and I meditated every morning. I was doing yoga every day and I was eating green juices. And now I had just had a burger and I'm crying on my back porch and I feel sad and I'm having anxiety. And how come I used to be so great? And it's like every single stage within every minute of the moment of now is your moment and it's meant to be your moment, and don't compare it to anything else because it isn't about what was best for you in 2013 or 2 weeks ago. You know what I mean? So it's like they're really wanting me to emphasize to the people listening and to us that every moment of change and every moment that is the now is your best moment now, and it can look however it is that you know it to feel and look, and not to compare it to any moment, even one that has passed 2 minutes ago.
That's beautiful. That's so beautiful. Perfect way to wrap it up.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, have an awesome week, ladies.
Thank you.
Sure, we'll talk soon.
All
Hey,
right.
Elise, when are you on your Avalon Spirit Night?
June 14th. Not next Monday, but the Monday after.
Okay, so we talk one more time. We'll talk about that so that people can figure out how they can get on that too and hear you talk, because that's going to be a wicked night too.
I'm excited.
Awesome. Okay, well, have a good week.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.